And that's what it feels like to get roasted by Edwin McCain. What is going on, everybody? This is the Cover Band Confidential Podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more while sucking less. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
So something weird happened this week.
Tell us.
And actually lots of weird things happened this week. I feel like everybody in our immediate orbit, as far as like bands and stuff, are having just very strange Octobers. So here's basically the way that my week has gone. On Wednesday, I did a solo acoustic gig in preparation for doing all of these other things that were supposed to be happening. As of like 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a Friday the 13th gig. There were 2 gigs on the 14th and this corporate event that we're doing this coming Wednesday. As of right now, only 2 of those things are happening. Some stuff just fell through. The Warped thing fell through, which I'm kind of bummed about, but honestly very relieved about, because we were going to have to go in with a bunch of new material without any sort of rehearsal or prep. They're just pushing the date, which is totally fine. You know, we want to definitely be a part of it, but it just wasn't a good time. And it wasn't a good time for us either. So, that part is fine. But the main things that I'm working on now are wrapped up the acoustic gig thing and the corporate thing coming up, and we'll circle back to that one in a little bit. But while I was doing the acoustic show, which is, we talked about this last week, I hadn't done one in a while. Yeah. So I spent all that week plugging all my cables in and making sure I had dupes of everything in the event that something didn't work. I did get to test out the QSC that was broken, and I plugged in a bad cable to it and freaked out because when I turned on, I went, I was like, oh no. But then I swapped to the other side and everything worked out. I was like, okay, thank God, it's just a mic cable. And it was a pretty low stakes deal. We were playing in this place called Halcyon, which is one of those work live kind of places. And on Wednesday nights, they do cornhole out in this kind of common area. And I was playing in a restaurant just right on the outside of it. So people were kind of coming and going. Had a perfectly good night, made like $50 worth of tips. And as I was wrapping up the night, the last 30 minutes, I was like, what the hell? I'll open up TikTok on my phone and I'll live stream the last part of the night. And as I'm going through, I decide to start playing I'll Be by Edwin McCain. And I was jokingly, I was like, this one's dedicated to my good friend Edwin McCain on TikTok. And I start playing it, Edwin McCain logs on to the live stream and proceeds to give me shit about playing his song, which was pretty, it was a unique experience. Yeah. But he was literally trying to like make me laugh or like crack up. Told me, like I owed him 0.003 cents for his song, and was just giving me crap. It was a very surreal moment because you hear about those things for like, some guy was busking on the street and the person who wrote the song walked by, and there was that whole moment. Well, that kind of happened, but via the internet. But I did DM him. I was like, hey man, you made my night. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for stopping by.
It's awesome.
Super interesting thing. But the event went well. Manager was super stoked and was like, hey, yeah, we'd love to have you back. So I don't know if they're doing much more live music there. I don't know. They probably have another 4 to 6 weeks, but I'm sure they're probably booked up. But hopefully that means more opportunities down the road. And yeah, so 1 good gig, 2 canceled gigs, and 1 big one to go. And that's kind of where I'm at. How about you?
Very cool. I have an acoustic coming up on the 7th of October. I have one on the 13th. And then the band is doing a trunk or treat at Village Beverage, which is where I did one of my acoustic shows last weekend, in the afternoon. And so that'll be fun. A bunch of kids running around. We'll pull out some of the Halloween-y stuff and have fun with it. But, you mentioned weird things happening all across Patreon. We've had cancellations and venues flaking out and going back in as a favor and for a gig that wasn't great. And
sound guys falling asleep.
At the board, yeah. Good story. So
there's some wild stuff going on out there.
Yeah.
There's a Friday the 13th coming up. Maybe it's tied to that.
Yeah.
Who's to say?
Who knows?
What spoopy tunes are you working up for this one? I would assume spooky, right?
I haven't even started.
ARS?
Yeah, that one's on my radar. I haven't really looked at it yet. Heard it in a store today and was reminded that I need to deal with that one. We do a few of them. I can't even, it's been so long now. I haven't even pulled them up yet. I can't get my brain quite around it. I'm seeing Christmas stuff out in stores and I can't even quite get my head to Halloween yet. So, yeah, I can't even answer that question right now.
I gotta say, man, the Halloween spread as far as like out and about in the stores is pretty disappointing this year.
Yeah.
We went into multiple shops this past weekend that had literally like nothing that was remotely on theme for that deal. And like you were saying, seeing Christmas stuff already out, which just seems
like we're skipping Halloween this
severely
year.
inappropriate. It's like 85 freaking degrees out.
It's 85 degrees out. Halloween's on a Wednesday this year, so that's kind of a bummer. It's just not a good year for Halloween, I guess. I don't know.
I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Well, but, as we record here, it's October 1st. We got 30 days to get there, so we'll see.
It's time to get spooky, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
By the way, we did hear the feedback loud and clear from the listener survey, and we will not be doing a best Halloween song episode this year. We definitely got told that is not a favorite, so we won't be doing it.
It was a lot of work, but, we always enjoy having those conversations. I mean, I think you and I just having the opportunity to talk about something that isn't necessarily like nuts and bolts is always kind of fun.
Yeah.
You have mentioned on multiple occasions that you'd kill for a distraction cast.
Yes.
And if that's something you guys would be interested in, hit us up, coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. We can talk about lots of other things and not try to like cram in TV talk midway through.
That's right.
Another topic.
That's right. And Schulte said he's open and available, so
there we go. Amber would love to hop on, so maybe we'll do that.
Distraction cast guest. So.
Indeed. All right, well, let's move to reviews. This one came from Apple Podcasts. This is from Phil. It says, if you're a band leader, then this is a must listen. As a band leader, I have to say this is the best resource I found for inspiration and valuable information. Adam and Dan are great hosts who are knowledgeable, passionate, and experienced. Well done. Big thanks to Phil. I believe he's up in the kind of New York corridor area doing 90s stuff up there. So cool. If you'd like to be shouted out on the show or you want to hear your name, give us a review. Yeah. We'd love to read it. Good stuff.
All right.
Well, talking about some other kind of just show pod housekeeping things, we had a really cool thing happen this week. We acquired our 50th patron.
Boom.
So it's the first time we've ever hit that number. I feel like we were talking about hitting 40 not that long ago. Yeah. It's been within the past year. So it's awesome to see this community continue to grow.
Totally.
And, like we were saying earlier, there was a lot of fun conversations being had on the Patreon Slack, and as well as, bonus episodes and all of that good stuff. So if you are considering supporting the show that way, we'd love to have you. And you can check out the links in the show notes to find out more.
That's right. Today's bonus episode content was mostly about being a travel vlogger, which is something Adam aspires to, it turns out.
Man, there's so many. This is ADHD, like, to a T. Jack of all trades, master of none. I can make content about all these things. Yeah. You can make content about making content. Like some people, that's like their entire lane.
For sure. Is anyone making content about making content about making content?
Well, if I talk about it, I technically am doing that.
That's true.
So if you're talking about the concept of content creators creating content for other content creators about how to create content,
you should take that whole concept and stuff it up inside itself, and then off you go.
Yes, the content turducken of content. Yep. Well, that's great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see the clip that I sent out to the group about the U2 Sphere footage?
Yeah. Yes. Dude. And I've been watching, there's somebody posted a bunch of videos from, unfortunately, it's from the ground, like right in front of you too. So you don't really get the full effect. You kind of have to be up in the stands.
Weirdly enough, like this, it's one of those things where being in the nosebleeds is actually kind of like a better experience.
Way better. And
it's wild to think about.
Yeah, that seeing a show there might be a bucket list item.
Well, and that's the other thing is that like a lot of the times you look at these things and you're okay, Lady Gaga's doing a residency or Adele's doing a residency.
I'm sure it's great.
And it's cool. Yeah. Actually, all of the footage I've seen of Lady Gaga is like she's doing like a full-blown like lounge act where she's going out into the audience and she's like messing with people and like it's great.
Yeah.
But to think that you could go and see something that you literally can't see anywhere else, that's
amazing.
That's a pretty compelling argument.
Yeah.
Seeing the Joshua Tree, they did Octoon Baby all the way through and then they do their hits, but they were doing Where the Streets Have No Names. They're doing it in Joshua Tree and it's literally like it's all around you. Yeah. It is wild.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I do wonder how the 3D effect performs when you're not in the center of the sphere. I feel like there's got to be some distortion happening if you're off on the edges. You've probably done Soarin' at Epcot. If you're off on the edges of that, everything bends toward the middle very badly. I saw the Eiffel Tower folded in half there, So I imagine the same kind of thing kind of happens in the sphere. Although from the diagrams I've seen, it looks like it's a little bit flattened. It's not really circular. It's kind of, I don't know. It may have some design elements that are meant to compensate for that. But I totally want to do it. The outside of it is cool enough, and then it's like to see what they're doing with show graphics inside it is mind blowing. Yeah.
Well, that's the interesting thing is that like that's all people have been talking about is like the outside. I didn't even know that there was an inside. Yeah. I thought that was the thing.
Right.
I thought that was the whole point. And then they're like, no.
They were showing outside stuff, and it was like, so cool and so weird. But yeah.
I think they're onto something. And I'm curious if, first off, that I think they said that thing costs like $2.6 billion to build.
Yeah.
I don't see them putting them a bunch of different places, but
No. And in a day, it consumes as much energy as like 400 houses do in a year.
that sounds about right.
So, yeah.
I believe it.
Very, very Vegas. All right. Best band to see there. Go.
Ooh. Muse would be fun to see there.
Yes.
But I keep thinking about like bands that I am like very emotionally drawn to that don't necessarily put on really massively compelling live shows. If there was any possibility of a reunited Pink Floyd,
Thank you.
that would be the ultimate.
Thank you. I would take Roger Waters, but yeah, I mean, Roger's technology and projections and stuff around his stage show these days is extremely elaborate, and he would make very good use of that Sphere. Imagine seeing The Wall live.
Like that.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty wild.
Yeah.
For us as performers and cynics to a certain degree,
Yeah.
seeing something that it legitimately took my breath away.
Right.
Like I was, because there's this one particular section where like you were watching the numbers and the things kind of go up
and then the
to the
ceiling
top,
fell.
and then the ceiling drops.
Oh my God.
I showed it to Amber and she was like, I would have a fucking panic attack.
Yeah.
I feel claustrophobic just watching this on the phone.
And
I don't know
I'm
how
in
I could even
one of the
process
biggest
being
rooms
there.
I've ever been in my life.
And I feel like I'm in
Yeah.
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 I feel like I can't breathe.
Right.
Wild stuff.
Yeah. One of the best comments I saw was like, wow. It was like audio, somebody talking during the show. It's like, wow, I'm going to barf. Yeah. I think it's probably the experience pretty much.
Feels, technology rips, man. I'm into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the best.
I think Metallica could do a good job then.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Probably.
Lots of fire graphics. Lots.
Yeah.
I bet you probably couldn't do like actual fire.
Well, why would you make the fire 10,000 feet tall?
Yeah, but then like, would it like hurt the LED?
Well, do LED fire. Do it like a projection of fire.
That's what I'm saying. Like you couldn't do real fire.
You can do, well, I don't know. I mean, the stage is, who knows, but maybe you could get enough offset from the stage to have.
Yeah.
And
I mean, nobody knows. We'll have to, it'll prove itself out.
That's right. I guess U2's doing 20 shows or something. It's like fewer than I thought.
Yeah, I think it's like 28 shows.
Yeah.
I think it's spectacular technology. I can't wait to see what, because this is proof of concept. This is version 1.0.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the next residency in there, and what are they going to be able to pull off?
Right. Right. I
Also
guess
be
the
curious,
company
like,
that
to
does
see how
it has a small version, like a lab that is.
Yeah, there has to be
test version, and so, but yeah, to do it on the scale is like there's not going to be another one installed anytime soon. I wouldn't think.
I would be curious to know how long it takes to prep one of these things.
Right.
Like I haven't heard anything about U2 doing this until maybe a week ago, that they were going to be the first band to open up that thing. I also saw reports where they're like the first rehearsals didn't go so well.
Yeah. I think I first heard about it a couple of months ago, but I didn't understand what was happening inside it. Obviously we'd only seen the
how could you?
Yeah, the footage. Yeah, right. The other thing that blows my mind is some of the video that we've seen has live video from the stage that's being shot live and superimposed into the design that's happening. This very elaborate design. So somebody's doing some real-time video composing and editing and stuff. Like there's some high-tech stuff going on behind the scenes
stuff
to make this thing happen.
Sure. Well, I like I said, I can't wait to see what comes next, because it's just super cool.
Amazing. Yeah.
Do we have any other housekeeping?
No. I just want to get into this because you're prepping for something that is big and startlingly so, and fell out of the blue, and you're kind of dealing with it.
Yeah. So here's the deal. A couple of weeks ago, I feel like we got this flood of inquiries kind of all at once. And for us, the first thing I always ask is, well, what's your budget? Because a lot of folks will kind of reach out, and I just don't want to necessarily get 5 emails in before people realize like, hey, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So I typically kind of jump out with that fairly quickly.
Yeah. In sales, we call that qualifying the lead.
Exactly. And a few of them kind of fell to the wayside. And this one was like, it felt like the longest of shots. It was somebody who was like, hey, I work for a marketing company and there's this event. It's in South Carolina, which is, a state over. It's in the middle of the week. And we would want you to play in the morning, basically to kick off this event. And when I went to kind of, again, get some additional information, are we providing production? What's your budget? What are your needs? That kind of thing. It became very clear that their budget was significantly higher than what we would normally request. And it was a good thing, because if I'm asking the guys in the group to leave work, cash in their PTO to do a gig like this, it needs to be worth their while. And so I was able to say, hey, it's going to be at minimum double what we make, but it could be higher than that. And it ended up being, I sold them at one, and then I was like, hey man, this thing's confirmed, and now you're making an extra like $200-300. And they're like, has that ever happened before? But we'll get back to that whole thing in a little bit. But yeah, their budget was high, almost triple what we would normally get.
Yeah.
And it was strange, because on one end, that's really cool to get the opportunity to do something and make really good money doing it. That's ultimately what all of us are trying to do.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting and really kind of fun to talk about, and really cool until the contract got signed. And then the whole experience in my head shifted, because now it's a matter of being a band that is worth that payday. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And that's kind of what I've been wrestling with for the past couple of weeks, trying to figure out what we can do, if there's anything to be done, in order to make that feel like a good deal for the people who are hiring us. So that's kind of where I'm at. There's a lot of internal stuff around, I would say, imposter syndrome, the idea that, I don't deserve this, and like they're going to figure out that they've been had or whatever. But also just, I feel an immense amount of pressure to deliver on this event.
Right.
And trying to convey that to the other people in the band, and trying to make sure that, we do a good job. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
You're staring at, like, we've got 3 days to go, and what needs to happen between now and then to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as it can.
Yeah. And you asked some important questions of that client about what you could add to the show, what you could, enhance to make it worth that much money. And pretty much they told you no thanks about all that stuff, right?
Yeah. So, my thought was, okay, well, like, when you kind of get into these back and forth, you're ultimately your customer service. So what is it that they want? And you're trying to give them what they want. They went through our list. They requested some songs. I provided a little bit of feedback, like, hey, maybe these aren't the best choices, but I didn't really get a definitive yea or nay. So we're probably just going to have to make some calls on that. And then just in general, like, hey, what kind of AV setups do you need? I can provide assets. So, like, no need. We've got other stuff for the event itself. And I was like, well, what about, do you want us to dress like we normally would dress or whatever? And they're like, no, we'll just do like plain black. They want us to kind of just blend while also being like high energy. It's a weird mix of things.
That's gonna be interesting, doing your high energy show in stage blacks.
In stage black, again, 7:45 in the morning for roughly 30 minutes.
Right. For the biggest payday this band's ever had.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wrestling with the what is about to happen.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of question marks, and that's the thing that I'm trying to deal with. I think imposter syndrome is the best way to kind of express what I'm dealing with.
Right.
Is the idea that, like, I'm not sure if what we offer is worth that. I've had so many conversations with musicians about this specific thing.
Right.
And I have heard some really just fantastic insight on that. At the end of the day, the way that we got that gig was that they showed the people upstairs our promo, and they're like, yeah, that works. So clearly the thing that we're doing is the thing that they were after.
Yeah. Why add to it?
Yeah, exactly. But I have to shout a friend of mine out. He did a very good job of talking me off the ledge.
Good.
As I'm kind of dumping on my friend on Messenger, he goes, you don't need to worry about anything. You're the best band standing on that stage.
Right.
Nobody else in that room is going to do it better than you are.
Exactly.
And I was like, that's true.
Yep.
He talked me off the ledge to a degree at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the most qualified guy in the room. No question.
He's like, hey, dummy, they saw what you could do. And they were like, yeah, that's what we're after.
Right.
So
it's funny that a bump in money can cause that, but it certainly can. My job last pay review cycle, I got a bump that was nice. And I haven't felt in my career imposter syndrome in a lot of years. It's really been like a thing that I have not had to deal with. I mean, a lot for a while, but not recently.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly was getting paid a chunk more, and I was just full of like, oh my God, am I worth that? And what happens when they find out I'm not? And just like that good news just sent me into a real
An
thing.
absolute spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I came to understand about that is, like, maybe deserving is a myth, right? Maybe it's not about what you've deserved. Maybe it's just about what you deliver. Maybe it's just about people are only going to pay you what they see you're worth. And if you don't see you're worth that, then you should probably look where they're looking, because they're the ones with the checks they're writing. That speaks a little louder than whatever noise is in my head. So yeah, that stuff can, come rearing up at any moment. But yeah, glad you're surrounded by people who can help you kind of get a rational sense of it. That's good.
So here's another thing that I did want to note, and this is kind of one of those you miss 100% of the swings you don't take. When we initially had this conversation, I hopped on the phone with the guy who ended up doing the contract. And when I asked their budget, they gave me a window. And that window swung about $2,000 in either direction.
Okay.
And the pessimist in me was like, well, we would take the lower payday for sure. Like that would be, it would still be a great deal for everybody involved. But I kept trying to get a chance to hop on the phone with him and kind of talk through some other things. We could just never get our schedules lined up. And he was like, hey, I really need to get that contract out. So when I drafted the contract, I just put the top number and sent it out.
Nice.
And they didn't say anything. They're like, here you go. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was in their window.
It was in their window.
It's one of the things
they had no problem.
When negotiating salaries, it's the same kind of thing. Like somebody says a window, like they're willing to pay the top. Just ask for the top. Don't be cute. They're not going to negotiate you up. Yeah.
Actually, I have heard of a couple of scenarios where somebody was talked up because it was like they were kind of even below what they would normally, like, hey, how about this?
Yeah.
Because they were just like, I honestly couldn't live with myself if I hired you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. But barring complete undersells,
Yeah.
But
I think that's something that like we as musicians really struggle with. We like underselling yourself.
Yeah.
The take what you can get mentality can make things really hard to accept.
Oh, it's cemented the $100 a head price. It's what we can get. We're not going to fight for more. It's all the budget that's set aside because it's what it's been forever. It's because nobody's negotiating.
I had a friend of mine who was in one of the groups that I used to play in, and anytime somebody said something that was mildly self-deprecating, he'd go, hey man, don't sell yourself short. That's my job. That's a great way to put it, because we don't always kind of hold our own value as well as we should. Mm-hmm. And to me, these feel like moments where you kind of are testing whether what you think about yourself is, in congruency with the marketplace.
Yeah.
I had a lot of conversations this weekend with family and stuff, and they're like, well, now you're the band that makes this much. And I was like, well, sure. I could tell the next person that wants to hire us. So I was like, well, last gig we made this much, but it would probably drop the number of confirmed shows that we would get,
for sure,
just based on how much smaller the audience of potential clients who are in that price point.
Yeah, no, coming out with a revised price sheet based on this would disqualify you from a lot of opportunities. But you're doing the right,
tremendously unwise.
Yeah, no, you're doing the right thing though by having your opening question be like, listen, let's talk first about your budget. Partially it's because I want to excuse myself from a conversation that doesn't work for me, but it's also because I can tailor my offering to a whole lot of different kinds of budgets. So let's talk about 100%. That. What I can do for you really depends on what you have the appetite for.
When you're in that window, you've got room.
Yeah.
In our situation, the way that I've always put it is, if somebody's like, I don't know what the budget is, what's your range? I'm going to go full price. Mm-hmm. But what I will do, because when somebody goes, I'm not sure what the budget is, that it typically means that they aren't aware of what entertainment can cost.
Right.
So you do have to kind of like set reality for them. Like, hey, this is what this entails. But what I typically will do is, if that's a little outside of your budget, just tell me where you are, and maybe we can adjust the lineup. We can move some things around to see if we can rock within that kind of that window.
Yeah, we want to work with you.
Exactly. And first off, it shows that you are invested in what they are trying to do. And it's good policy to be willing to talk through things.
Yep.
But there are moments where like the chasm's too wide. We had something come in. It was something that somebody referred us for. And when the number came back, in order for it to work, not only was I not going to get paid, but Amber wasn't going to get paid. And then I was going to have to pay somebody to run sound for us.
Yeah.
So this gig was going to cost me money.
Right.
And that's not tenable.
Yeah,
it's not something that we can do.
Yeah. An interesting thing about it is when you come out with a number that is, in that case where somebody sort of hasn't contemplated budget, and you lay out a number that seems big to them, if nothing else, that big number gives you credibility.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big boy number. It's a real professional number, and that's what it's going to take. And, we want to work with you. So there may be ways that can adjust things to fit, but that's basically where you're anchoring, the beginning of the conversation. Now, how many folks are you bringing to this show in South Carolina?
This is going to be it's a 5-piece with the sound guy.
Okay.
So we're going with our normal crew, basically. I contemplated potentially adding people to the deal, but I mean the contract says 5-piece with this, and this. So
No,
if
and
I
they
was
turned
doing
down
that,
everything else that you might have wanted to do to make, to add to the show. They weren't interested in any of that, so why add personnel too? Like, you don't need to volunteer stuff.
Yeah. And the thing that this situation reminded me of is that 5-6 years ago, we had an opportunity come up where, like, it wasn't a law firm. It was the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association was looking for entertainment for their event. And so you basically have, I mean, it was at the Four Seasons. Like, it was going to be a swanky event.
Yeah.
And that was the first time we pitched ourselves at $5,000. And again, didn't think twice about it.
Right.
And so that was a thing where we went from a band that was typically kind of making somewhere between 2,000 to maybe 3,000. And then, I mean, that jumps you up a tier.
Yep.
And it is something that you can use as a baseline and kind of work your way up. Now, this one is significantly even above that rate. So it's not necessarily a good frame of reference, but it is a thing that you can point back to in certain circumstances so that people understand your experience, the things that you have been a part of, and again, kind of buys you more credibility.
Sure. I mean, that answer to, gosh, I don't know what the budget is. Well, we go from this, modest amount to this great big amount you're talking about for this week. And then, all right, well, so we can toss something in the middle there or find a way to make it work for you. Those numbers all give you credibility, and then you want to communicate them in a way that leaves you room to talk.
Because, I mean, ultimately, you either make the deal happen or they pick somebody else. And so if ultimately you want to play the gig and get the payday, then you need to be willing to work with people.
Right.
And so it's always kind of a tricky thing. And musicians really aren't good at talking about money, but it is one of those things that I think that if that's not something that you do, you should probably lean into that, because it will save you a fair amount of time and could potentially get you higher up the totem pole down the road.
Yep. Listen, it doesn't just apply to full bands. It doesn't just apply to bands doing private events and stuff. I don't do an acoustic show for less than 200.
Yeah.
And I ask for 250. So before the pandemic, I was in the 150 range, and now it's just like, I'm not coming out for less than 2. It's not happening.
Well, and like for private events, I'll typically double whatever the take is that I'm normally making.
100%. I think I quoted 1,000 for a private event solo acoustic a month or so ago, and
that's pretty rad.
They're still working on it, but I knew the organization could handle it. So
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with pricing for the respective client.
Yeah,
I mean, ultimately, what I'm looking at is, because the guys were like, I don't know, dude, like a Wednesday load in for a Thursday morning thing. I mean, is this really worth it? And my thought process was, this is it's not the company, to my knowledge, it's the marketing agency that is putting the event on for the organization.
No.
So if we are able to be a good resource, do a good job, this could potentially open us up to more of these
for sure
very strange 45-minute, very high pay scenarios.
Totally.
And so as a part of that, I also helped them find a DJ, and I didn't take a cut or anything. I was just I tried to be as little bit of the middleman as I could, but there was some back and forth with the representative for the DJ, and I ended up getting into it much more than I was planning on. And I literally did at the end of it, I had to say, guys, I'm not getting a cut of this. I need you guys to just figure this out, because I was just trying to help. And I'm just going to leave you guys to it, let you guys work the rest of it.
Yeah.
So, but the intent was to garner some goodwill, some karmic, what's the opposite of karmic debt? Karma.
Yes, I'm like
karma investment deposit.
Call it karma police. I don't know. I know what you're heading toward.
Geez.
Yeah. Just trying to put some value in, be a solution.
Yeah.
And it's interesting
like
too.
we were talking about last week.
Exactly.
Not being the next problem.
Exactly. The fact now is you're aware that there is a gig that pays this much, and so getting tapped into that market means that you are now a band that gets paid this much. Right? You can go after those and make them worth your while. And it's an interesting new problem.
But I think if we got to that point, it would be there would have to be some serious conversations.
Yeah.
If this turned into something that was happening once or twice a month, I would have to. It's like, hey, this is where we are now, and we either you rise to the occasion, or we got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And more resources do give you better resources. So if you wanted to bring more players in, like you wanted to hire a horn section, like you have the the latitude to do
Right.
that. You know, add whatever stuff you want to make those things more impressive or whatever. It's just like you said, more money, more problems, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I mean,
Yeah, but
I
people
have
do say
I
that. There's a
have
whole
said
song
it.
about it.
It's not accurate to quote me saying it.
While Dan and I have been talking about this over the course of the past few weeks, he did kind of like, "Hey, man, this is a pretty good problem to have." I was like, "I know,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
this is safe space talk. This is inside thoughts coming outside
Right.
in the circle of trust."
Right. Right.
But it is, again, it's good to be reminded. And whether I completely lose my mind or not, it's still happening in 3 days,
And
and it's
yeah.
going to go. There'll be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if I could enjoy it and be present in the moment, that would be much better than doing what I've been doing up to this point.
Fair. Listen, the prediction that I can see is that it will be a perfectly ordinary, much shorter than average show. And then on the way home, you'll count some dollars.
Haven't quite figured that part out. I did request sacks of money with
Yeah.
dollar signs drawn on them.
Yeah. Gold bullion
but I haven't
also
heard
would be a
back.
good option.
Yeah, like whatever that congressman was trying to like
Right.
sell stuff to
Exactly.
Egypt or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, you what for sure you want to be able to swim around in it like Scrooge McDuck. That's the really crucial part.
for sure.
Or lie
So
on
if
it,
you've
like
ever
Breaking
swam
Bad.
in a pile of money, let us know. coverbandconfidential@gmail.com.
Right. Or lie on it in a storage unit like Breaking Bad.
Yeah. All right. That's where I'm at.
All right. All right,
And
Moneybags.
you know,
Good work.
at some point we'll do the debrief. But I am flying out to DC on Sunday. I'm just now realizing I hadn't told you that.
Yeah.
So we've got to.
We could record Saturday or something. We'll work it out.
Okay. Guess what? That's what we'll have to do.
Yeah, work it out.
Do we leave this in?
I don't know. Probably not.
This is one of the looser
Yeah.
sessions, I have to say.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's good.
I could theoretically edit this, while I'm gone for 2 days.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, folks. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate each and every one of you. So stoked on the fact the 50 patrons thing. That's super awesome.
Yeah.
Things have been going great. And we are 8 episodes away from episode 300.
Wow.
And it's super cool. And I don't know where we're going, but I know we're going to keep putting these things out.
All right.
And we'll continue to share all of the misadventures as we go. With that being said, in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of October 6th, 2023.